I guess we'll go ahead and get on with the meat and potatoes of why we're all here. And I'll take the opportunity to thank Mark and for joining us tonight and presenting this to us. And I'm just going to turn it over to Mark Johnson from LinkUp Communications. I'll let him give his quick bio because he knows it better than I do, and I can't read it off my laptop right now. My laptop just decided to reboot from an update. So,
Ken, thank you. I appreciate that. I am Mark Johnson. I'm the president of LinkUp Communications. You may have known part of the company we purchased several years ago, which was KU Communications, that provides satellite solutions, content delivery solutions for broadcast applications, video and audio. We build systems, we provide ongoing space segment, and we're deep into satellite as part of content distribution for customers all over the country. The majority of our customers are radio. Our satellite delivered systems, are probably 2,000 easily across the country. And that's just in radio, and probably another couple of hundred in video projects. I've been doing satellite actually since 1983, when I built my first downlink for radio, getting off of AT&T landlines and going to satellite in 1983. That led me to the satellite service division at National Public Radio for 14 years. And then had the opportunity to go out on our own, and we're a family business. Actually, my wife and I do it together. She's actually we met in broadcasting 37 years ago. So we love this community. We love serving broadcasters, and it's what we do. And we jumped in deep into the 5G project. Going back to 2018, 2017, when we first started hearing what was going to come about in relation to 5G and what was going to be needed at that time. SES, Intelsat, Telsat, and Eutelsat were working on an industry-based system that wound up not happening, but we were a part of that, along with Chris Emily and Jim Leifer, going to the FCC several times. So let's kind of review how we got here with the FCC. Basically, their purpose in all this was to add a mobile allocation, with the exception of aeronautical mobile, to the 3742 area. And actually wound up selecting 300 megahertz, which is the 37-40, and that it was their objective in all of this is to make that mobile allocation available for the broadband mobile companies. So what it winds up being is 280 megahertz plus a 20 megahertz guard band. That is going to be set up for flexible use by December 5th, 2023. So they want to provide the eligible space station operators with the option to accelerate that. So that becomes the idea that we get into with the red and blue filter. So first in the top 46 markets, which of course DC and Baltimore are, the objective is to clear out 120 meg immediately. For television broadcasters and cable operators, it's going to take some time to move all of their content up to where the blue filter will work, which will be the 4.0 to 4.2. That's going to require the launching of about 7 satellites. So all of that's going to take some time. So getting everybody above 4 gig is not going to happen until December 2023. But the FCC put together this accelerated payment to give SES and Intelsat and Telsat the motivation to open up the top 46 markets this year. And so that's why in those top 46 markets, you're going to start to see the red and then the blue filter. Outside of those markets, it's going to be irrelevant. If you're a radio operator, it's also irrelevant because they've moved all the radio up to where they will ultimately be above 4 gigahertz on both the Intelsat platforms and the SES platforms that deliver radio.
Mark, do you encourage questions, or would you rather have us hold questions till the end? You
can do either. Your call.
Oh, well, it's your preference, but I just had a question about the 46 markets. I heard that Washington and Baltimore is one PEA, and that it is not in the 46 markets that is transitioning, but I haven't found authoritative source for that. Is that true? Do you know?
Well, I tell you what, when we get to the end of the, I've got the FCC's top 46 list off the website. So after we finish, I'll pull that image up and share that and we'll look at it together.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Also, the fixed service licenses that involve point-to-point links, they're also going to have to move their frequencies by December 5th, 2023. All right. Now let's see. Come on. All right. So both incumbent fixed satellite and fixed service licenses are going to be reimbursed for reasonable relocation costs. And that's all part of the plan. They had a auction, and that auction came up with, where it landed, I think it was $91 billion. And that's going to be used to take care of these reimbursements. And also if you did the opt-out lump sum payment. So the FCC established a relocation payment clearinghouse that's going to manage that, as well as auditing of relocation funds. So they'll be going out and checking, just as they did with the TV repack, to make sure that the reimbursed costs are as they're presented. Then there's also a relocation coordinator, and there's a lot to coordinate here. So if you think about it, you've got a finite number of satellites that have been using 500 megahertz at each one of those locations. So in 3 years, you've got to cut that capacity by 60%, but you've got more users than that. So what you have to do is you're going to have to launch satellites into orbital slots that either are not currently occupied or were not going to be replaced. And so that what you're going to have to do is put those up there, and then you gain 200 megahertz at this slot and 200 megahertz at this slot and 200 megahertz at this slot. So that's part of the relocation coordinator. They've got to talk about migrating carriers up above 3.82 in stage 1, and then ultimately moving them above 4 gigahertz. Then also part of that relocation is, okay, we've got 15,000 or 18,000 registered downlinks. This many took the lump sum, and this many have to be handled by Intelsat and SES's representatives. So that's all part of the relocation coordinator's responsibilities. So they also adopted service and new technical rules for flexible use licenses. So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about the downlink portion of C-band. We're not talking about the uplink portion. We're only talking about the downlink portion. So that runs from 3,700 to 4,200. So 24 transponders. Currently what we've been using since I put my first downlink in 1983. The key entities that are outlined in the FCC's order are the FCC, of course. They auctioned off the spectrum, and they're the final arbiter of all issues. We talked about the relocation payment clearinghouse. So they're going to approve the cost. The coordinator, they're managing that schedule. Thousands of downlinks, hundreds of networks, space segment launches, all of that's going through them. The operators, of course, we know is SES and Intelsat, Telsat, and Eutelsat. Then, the Earth station operators, well, that's all of us with the downlink and uplink. And then the customers, that's the Viacoms, the NBC Universals, the Disney, ESPN, Discovery, even the small, regional news networks that do television and radio, and the public radio stations. So here's the timeline. So back in March, the Clearinghouse Search Committee convened. The operators filed whether they were going to do the accelerated relocation. That's done. Public notice, that's done. Satellite operators filing their transition plans back in June of 2020, that was done. Comments, and then in July of 2020, they chose the clearinghouse coordinator, and of course that's done. That takes us to August, and then December, when the auction actually began, and all the money was raised back in December, January, and February. There was a 30-day trigger about the lump sum, $8,948, which to some people, is a great deal because, they're going to have somebody put the filter in for them, do the testing and do the documentation and walk away with cash. Some people are going to do it and they're going to wind up losing out because they're going to have a hard time, putting in a new dish that functions with the filter and everything for that kind of number, and getting somebody to do it will be difficult as well. So where we're at is we're currently in phase one. So we're clearing 3,700 to 3,820 in the top PEAs, and it's got to be done by December 5th. Then we've got 2 years to clear out the rest of it, 3,700 to 4 gig nationwide. And then in 2025, all fixed satellite service license protection for 3,700 to 4,000 expires. 7 defined components in the space station operators transition plans. They list, and you can find their plans on the FCC website. They list the existing space stations that have to be repacked. So that's, okay, we're looking at, here's SES1, and I've got to get everybody above 3,820. So, NBC Universal can go up to transponder 6 or 7, and I can move them to another satellite, and I can take PBS and move them here, and take NPR and move them there. And then there's a number of new satellites. Like we said, we're going to have to gain 200 megahertz of bandwidth. We're going to have to move it to a new location and operate it from 4 gig to 4.2. Specific grooming plan for migrating those customers. That's all part of their transition plan. Technology upgrades, MPEG-4 video encoders and decoders, DVB-S2X encoding and decoding modulation schemes. So all of those things to repack. Some networks and cable systems are getting completely new hardware at their locations if they're part of the transition plan, if they didn't take the lump sum and get out. It also includes the number and location of Earth stations receiving signals. Doug and I have spent hours and hours with just our customers, with the hundreds of downlinks that we have in C-band, and hours and hours of meetings with SES, Intelsat, and Telsat to, okay, this group stayed in, this group took the lump sum, here's where it's at, let's look at it, go back what do they need? What do they need? What do they need? And, for, gee whiz, over a year, it was almost weekly meetings. Estimate of the number of earth station antennas that are going to require retuning or repointing. Sorry about that.
Co-channel interference.
Yeah, co-channel interference. Actually, that's the cross pole, isn't it? Specific timeline and milestone plan. So that's what they put together. So they delivered those transition plans last June. And there's a link, and we'll give you guys this presentation. Satellite Today actually has a link to their plans on the FCC website. And so the satellite owners put together their capacity plan, their timing plan, and their technology plan. And that also includes the additional satellites, and building a comprehensive plan requires engagement from you on the local level, as well as the folks who are representing SES and Intelsat and Telsat and Eutelsat. So what's a qualified, non-qualified, or non-responsive? Those are the three categories of stations. So qualified earth stations are you in that FCC IBFS registered database? It's like close to 18,000 in there. That is one of the biggest spreadsheets I've ever seen in my life. So unless you opt out of you get two primary benefits: the cost reimbursement and continued C-band operating protection. Several groups had chosen to opt out. We've had a lot of individual broadcasters opt out, especially in smaller markets. It's a win-win. So the cost reimbursement for the qualified earth station is filtering, modifications required due to repack, it can be, basically it's to make you whole after the 5G comes in, so that your content delivery is the same as it was before we started this whole process. So on December 6th, it should be the same as it was on December 4th. Qualified earth stations must facilitate the activities for accelerated clearing. The orders redefine power limits for the areas surrounding the qualified earth station. So, there's about a 1,700-foot halo, so to speak, around your registered downlink, and a 5G radiator will not be placed within that halo. If one is, then the filter is not as effective. Non-responsive earth stations, those are the folks that the representatives for Intelsat and SES, which for the most part, it's USSI and Satellite Engineering Group. Those calls, it was imperative that broadcasters return those calls so that they can arrange to protect your facility if you're a qualified earth station. And although the vendors, satellite operators, SES and Intelsat, wanted basically a couple of gateway locations that would be protected for the entire 500 megahertz. I think Intelsat wanted one or two, one being their Ellenwood facility outside of Atlanta. I think the Brewster facility was one that folks were interested in making it 500 megahertz so that they could operate stuff across the Pacific, or in the case of Atlanta, across the Atlantic. Nobody is going to have that. The FCC did not accept that gateway concept. Telemetry tracking control is going to be protected until December 2025, and then it becomes non-protected. So looking to compare affiliate list versus the FCC database and inquiries to clients. So let's talk a little bit about the red filter and the blue filter. We've been installing mostly blue filters because all of our installs, there's no reason to install a filter because, as I said, on the Intelsat side, the public radio transponders have moved up above transponder 17, and on SES 11, where the commercial radio is, and SES 2, where Christian radio is located. They've all moved up into those higher transponders above 17. And so we've been putting blue filters in. But so the red filter is all about clearing, that accelerated clearing by 12/5/2021. So as you can see, this is the typical input of the filter and the mating with the L&B and the filter. And the filter is generations above anything I've kind of ever seen before. So the red filter is all about this first year, 2021. And basically what you see there is transponder 7 and below is 3820 down to 3700. And then there's a 20, there's a 20 meg guard band there. So half of transponder 7 and above, all of those transponders will be active for the next 2.5 years. And that is where the red filter comes in, and it will block that with a 70 dB of attenuation. The blue filter, that's all about the final product. So in the case of a 46 market television facility, someone's going to come in this year and put in a red filter. Then as your content delivery gets moved up above 4 gig, so let's say NBC Universal is one of your content providers, and that dish and all the other dishes that you're receiving from, they get moved up above to transponder 18 and above, 16 and above, to transponder 16 and above. Then they'll come back to your facility and put in a blue filter. If you're in that qualified earth station and you did not take the opt out, then they'll take care of it. They'll know about the timing. If you did take the lump sum, or your company did take the lump sum of the opt out, then it's your responsibility to know when those timing issues happen and when those deadlines happen, and for you to go red filter, blue filter according to that time. So you've got to go and look at the transition plan for SES or Intelsat, whoever's providing content to your downlinks, and look at that transition plan and stay in tune with them to find out, okay, we're receiving PBS on this transponder, and we took the lump sum. So when are they moving, to transponder 21C, and which bird are they going to be in? Because you're going to have to make all of those adjustments yourself if you took the lump sum. If you stayed in and you're registered, all that gets taken care of for you, and that's all paid for by the clearinghouse. Give you an example of what the filter looks like. This is actually an installation we did last week. This is Anik F3. So as you're looking on the left, that is a good part of the transponder. I mean, that's the satellite, the full satellite image on the left before putting the filter on, and you can see on the right everything below. Remember, C-band is inverted, so what you see on the left side of the screen is the higher transponders, and the right side of the screen is the lower transponders.
Because this is an LNB that we're looking at, right? Okay.
Yeah. You're looking at the output of an LNB, so that's one gig, which is that L-band's LNB is what, 950 to 1250, and so or 1450, 950 to 1450. And so what you're seeing is how 70 dB down cut those signals completely out. So we look at the TV repack to tell us kind of how the FCC works in similar operations. And if there's also a third option where someone can do where they didn't take the lump sum, they're not participating with SES or Intelsat, and they want to turn in their own information. Or, this is what SES and Intelsat's folks will have to do. All invoices for reimbursement have to be specific to a site. Site registrations, not call letters. Vendors' EIN numbers, equipment IDs have to be accurate, and double check all math. I heard from several people who organize TV repack information. Spreadsheet rounding will kick that back to you. It's all about accuracy when you're going through the clearinghouse. For SES, you're going to hear from USSI for filter installations and modifications. If you did not take the lump sum, if you stayed in, registered, they're going to reach out. And if you haven't heard from them, C-band help at ses.com will get you information about SES's plans for your facility. Intelsat, most of that filtering, they don't expect to start until June. And then between June and December, the top 46 markets have to all get done. USSI for Intelsat will do most of the cable facilities. Wesco will do, non-cable, so broadcast radio and television. Harmonic will be doing equipment shipments for those, MPEG-4 new decoders. And then ATC will do all the simulsats. So for the first half of the year, it's all about repacking the uplink side and moving people up above transponder 7. And then the second half of the year will be about putting the filters in. So, and if you have any questions, they have a website or email, cbandinfo@intelsat.com, and that can get you whatever you need. So that's what we do. We had a busy week last week. We put in, we moved one uplink, put a filter on it, moved 2 downlinks from ANIC F1 to ANIC F3, and then put in 7 or 8 other filters. And the key with the filters, I think, if you're going to do your own lump sum or you're going to hire somebody out to do it, it's really all about documentation because you're going to have to show that it was at this point before the filter was in and before 5G came to your area. Here's what it looked like after the filter was done. And then if you have an issue in the future, here's what it looks like when 5G comes to your neighborhood. So it's all about protecting your content delivery and talking about, remote operations and, the multiple sites we have and things we get off of satellite for radio and television. It's critical to the industry, and it's critical to protect, what we have left, because C-band has served us well since, most folks, NPR and Mutual were a couple of the early satellite delivered networks around 79 and 80. Most of the other broadcast facilities, the early 80s switched from landlines to satellite. And, C-band provides us a reliability that no other technology has yet been able to reproduce. That 99.99% reliable content delivery is unique to C-band, and it's critical to broadcast because we all know that the fewer points of failure, the more reliable a content delivery system is. And for going on 40 years now, it's done. So, any questions? and I'll grab that top 46 for us real quick. Let me stop sharing and escape. And I'll grab that list of the top 46. Hold on just a second. Let's see, 46. There it is. All right. Yeah, Washington, Baltimore. Let me share this. Dun, 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 dun. All right. So that's the Appendix A federal FCCs, and Baltimore, Washington is number 5 there.
Right on the list. Very good.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You bet.
I notice Jonathan has his hand raised. Is that for a question, Jonathan?
It is, and a high five and a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the question I have is, you mentioned you moved recently someone over on a downlink from, I think it was ANIC F1 to F5. Does the movement of transponder and also the migration from MPEG 2 to MPEG 4 compression, is that going to require content providers to duplicate services for a period of time? And if so, is that
Absolutely.
being handled by like Intelsat or the satellite provider?
That is all part of that transition plan where they're determining how to get from, point A to point B. How are we going to get you there? In the case of the one we're working on right now, and F1R to F3, there's 62 sites in that network, and 8 of them have to have new foundations to be able to see F3, all part of the transition. But to do that, for us to get all that done, it takes a 90-day dual illumination period. So that's consistent, through all the satellite vendors, whether it's SES or Intelsat. They're providing dual illumination for where you're coming from to where you're going. And, that period might be 30 days, it might be 60 days, it might be 90 days, according to how much work has got to be done. And so that's all part of that transition plans. Like I said, Doug and I were on the phone, for this project for hours. I can imagine how many other, hundreds of weekly phone calls, Bronnie Fisher at SES was having with all their customers, because she's their point person. So probably one call after another. And even though we all jumped into, the COVID situation, and that impacts the delivery of semiconductors for receivers and for satellites, and who's coming to work at the, at Boeing or wherever they're making the satellite. The FCC said the timeline's the timeline. So keep moving. So, everybody's trying to get the work done. And, let's face it, there's not enough of all of us out there to get this done. So, it's important that everybody know the timelines and know the needs and the requirements.
Hey, Mark, this is Kent. Just quick question. I saw a dollar figure in your presentation of $8,948. What was that number? Was that the fixed sum value?
Yeah, that was the lump sum. So, in the case of, let's say XYZ, maybe they feel comfortable handling it themselves, and they wanted to take the lump sum. And for each dish, it was $8,948. So a typical radio station, there's one dish. Well, if you're Nexstar and you've got a TV station here in Panama City that's got 4 C-band downlinks, that's a pretty good deal. So you pay somebody else to do it if you don't think you're going to need new dishes. Now, if if you're out somewhere and your dish is 40 years old, you may or may not be able to replace it for that kind of dollar figure. So, and that was, I think the deadline on that was last April, that lump sum, or April or May, somewhere in there last year. And
late last spring.
yeah. And then, those people, the clearinghouse will get to that. Of course, they'll double check everything. And then at some point, hopefully, I would hope this year, those people will see those checks. Anything else?
I already asked a question, but I'm going to jump in with a second one. I've heard that some providers are offering a combination filter and LNB in one package.
Oh,
Yeah, interesting reaction.
Okay, let's talk about that, because that's
Okay.
I have an article. You were talking about articles in the SBE Signal. I have an article in the SBE Signal this month. So if you get a chance to read it, I've got a lot of information about that kind of stuff. But SES and Intelsat, it's just going back to the idea they had of an industry-led transition and auction, where they would just do all the work. They would just take care of everything, and they would do it all. And that way you would only have one person come to your site. So go back to the Nexstar TV example. You've got three, you've got one downlink looking at Eutelsat, one at SES, one at Intelsat. Well, they wanted to just send one person to do all your dishes. But under the clearinghouse, each one of them will have a different visit. SES and Intelsat and Eutelsat and Telsat, they all have their own transition plans instead of one combined transition plan. But as part of that transition plan, over a 3-year period, they spent millions of dollars testing and developing filters. And they went through several revisions. And as far as I know, my understanding, their specific developed filters were the filters made by Microwave Filter Company and the filters made by Alga Microwave. We're kind of specifically using the Alga Microwave filter. There are other people claiming to have filters, but their performance on the spec sheets that I've seen doesn't match the requirements that the C-band Alliance and then the FCC, embraced, of the 1,700 feet and 70 dB down, and over a 20 megahertz wide guard band. Those things, I know the Alga microwave filter that we use is revision E. So we're talking, 5 generations of revisions financed by the C-band Alliance. And so if they're not one of those two, I would be suspicious about performance and whether or not they would meet the very specific technical specifications.
And neither of those is a combination LNB filter,
No.
I presume. Okay, thank you.
No.
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
There was some talk about size of dish and whether it's a single feed or a multi-feed and whether you'd be eligible for a new dish if it's under 3 meters. And what can you tell us about that?
Under 3 meters for C-band would not be 2-degree compliant. Now, whether or not the clearinghouse would accept, accept that. I mean, if it's registered, my understanding is if you didn't take the lump sum and you're registered, they got to make you whole. But I think there's going to be a lot of case by case, because you see some pretty crazy things out there. I mean, in 2017 we did the AMC 8 to SES 11 radio transition, which was 6 months and 9,000 downlinks, and we moved hundreds of them. And the very last one I saw was a 2.8 meter Scientific Atlanta from 1983, 84, circa. So I don't know what the clearinghouse will do on those, but I'm sure it's a case by case basis. But the basic premise is they're supposed to make us whole.
I got a question mark on the filters.
Mm-hmm.
How about the combination of terrestrial interference filters, non-5G, that exist in a lot of stations, and the filters that are being provided on this? Do you have to daisy chain them? I have heard from some folks involved with Clearinghouse that the new filters were designed for replacing both. What do you hear?
That's exactly correct. It's a band pass filter. It cuts off below 30, below 39, below 3980. It should be 70 dB down, and then at 4.22, it's supposed to be 70 dB down there, because you got a lot of aeronautical traffic up at 4.3.4.4. So there's some military and some
altimeter
commercial
stuff.
Yeah, altimeter stuff. So that's in fact, we ran into a big one outside of an Air Force base in Indiana last week at 4.4. So yeah, it's supposed to replace the WiMAX filter or the altimeter filter.
So you shouldn't have to worry about daisy chaining them.
You should not.
That could be a mechanical problem.
Yeah, we're replacing them because the insertion loss on that would be prohibitive, I think. Hold on just a second. I'll be right back.
During that pause, I should mention that those who've been checking their program might have noticed that we've been hearing a lot from Mark Johnson and not a lot from Doug Watson, who there's been a last minute substitution here in personnel. Doug is going to be busy doing another presentation later tonight with another SBE chapter. So Mark's giving him a little bit of a break. You don't have to do two in one night and be exhausted for the second one. So thank you, Doug, for your thanks for guys for making it work for us.
Quite welcome. Quite welcome.
Absolutely. And we're always easy to get a hold of. Our website is www.linkupcommunications.com, and our emails are simple. It's mark@linkupcommunications.com or doug@linkupcommunications.com. And if we can ever be a resource for you, an asset for you, somebody to ask questions for, and we'll also make this presentation available to your chapter, and we're always here to help.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question just because I don't like the sound of crickets chirping. Fast forward, this whole repack thing for C-band has been moving along at such an incredible pace, a lot faster than I think any of us who have been around for the DTV transition or the 2 gigahertz one ever would have anticipated. But fast forward to after this is over, what mistakes do you think are going to be the ones that people commonly make, and the ones that you guys are going to end up cleaning up for your clients?
Yeah. I think, you know, it's a delicate balance. You know, one of the things that we've seen is, you know, people want to put, you know, people just want to think, okay, I'm going to slap a filter on my dish and, you know, it's good. Well, they might buy the wrong filter and it may not give them, you know, as Mark Felly was talking about, you know, it may not give them the protection from the altimeters. It may not give them protection from the 5G in a great enough attenuation. You know, I think the L&B filter combo that you talk about, I looked at it. I think it has like minus 60 dB of attenuation. Well, there's a big difference. You know, when you're trying to pick up a signal that's 22,000 miles away with you know, just a little bit of wattage coming down, and you're trying to focus it in, and 2,000 feet away is this 5G transmitter next to this thing that's designed to, you know, catch a whisper 22,000 miles away. Yeah, you got to point it right. It's got to be isolate polar, you know, your polarization's got to be right. And, you know, I'm afraid for the people who are just going to slap a filter on there and they're not going to document, you know, the before and after performance, which is what SES and Intelsat are requiring for all of their installations. So if you're getting you know, $8,948 and you have an issue with Verizon and you don't have documentation to, you know, to say, hey, look, you're doing something wrong because, you know, my system has a filter and the filter was working, you know, perfectly, and here's my documentation. You don't have all that, and you go to the FCC. I mean, my guess would be they would say, you know, I'm not the FCC, but my guess would be, you know, where'd the money go, Karen? You know, it's like, you know, it's so, you know, some people are going to need new dishes, you know, trying to make a 2.8 meter dish work in this environment is going to be ugly. You know, some people are going to have a 3 meter dish and, you know, for video, and suddenly you're going to DVB, you know, S2X and, you know, 16 PSK, and that suddenly the link budget doesn't work anymore. But so if you took the lump sum, you've got to do the research and ask the questions that SES and Intelsat have spent millions of dollars developing. That's the mistake I see, is just slapping a filter on and not paying attention to, you know, what these people spent millions of dollars developing. Does that make sense?
I think some of the things we've seen already, Mark, is even like we had a client that had been on the internet looking for filters and was expecting them to cost $1,100, and they don't. And I have no idea what that was or where it was, but when I told him what we would sell one to him for, his mouth dropped open. Literally stood there with his mouth open, just dumbfounded that he had nearly bought this $1,100 filter off the internet.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to run into some of that. I suspect you may run into some things like, I'm originally from Texas, and when a hailstorm would come through, everybody with a truck and a hammer became a roofer claiming insurance money. And so I think you got to be very careful about who you hire to do the work. If you hire somebody to do the work, make sure it's somebody that's established and has been around a while.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That sounds like that covers it pretty well.
Speaking as someone who did take the lump sum, do you have a recommended list of documentation that I should be following in terms of this is what I should check before I touch anything, and this is what I should verify once the filter's installed, et cetera?
We can certainly share with you what we do and what SES and Intelsat require of us. That's probably the easiest way to do it is, we have a specific satellite meter as well as a spectrum analyzer, and we save pictures from the spectrum analyzer and the satellite meter, which is the XR3 from Applied Instruments. It has a proof of performance test in it, and we save that proof of performance to a file of each filter we install. So, and of course we take before and after pictures of everything on the dish, the cabling, the connections, the ground wire, the polarization position of the feed horn, bolts on it. I mean, everything, waterproofing. We take pictures of all. We're keeping it all and making it available to anybody that we do an install for. So if you were going to do it yourself, that's what I would do. That would be make sure you get the alga or the microwave filter version, and then, keep the documentation.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Just send us an email and we'll show you our checklist.
That would be absolutely
Norm was-
wonderful. Thank you.
Sorry, William. Norm had his hand up earlier.
Yeah, this is Norm with the DoD. He pretty much answered my question with the whole terrestrial and having like other like Wi-Fi, like jamming it basically. But I guess my general question was, what about, have you guys had like any experience like overseas, with them upgrading as well or anything, or any experience with the same changes overseas?
I don't have any specific, experience with that, but my understanding is that one of the reasons that the FCC wanted to go they're actually beginning down around 3.4 because they're taking over some of the stuff that was from 3.4 to 3.7. Then that includes a lot of the WiMAX out in the rural areas. But that 3.4 to 4 is kind of a standard worldwide, where a lot of the handsets and a lot of the equipment. So you'll see those same frequencies being used supposedly in Europe and in Asia. So that protecting that 4 to 4.2 is going to be, I think, consistent in a lot of regions. If you could, and if you have any questions about that, I would go, both remember SES and Intelsat are both European companies. So you might go to that C-band help at ses.com or C-band info at intelsat.com and pose that question to them.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. That'll be on the presentation when it's available. Both of those addresses are on the last couple of pages.
All right. Any other questions? Anything else?
I'll ask one that will probably get me kicked out of this meeting.
Oh, good.
And I'm not sure you guys will be able to answer it. But are you seeing anybody saying, you know what, this is I'm going to take the money and run and go to terrestrial distribution versus and replace C-band with fiber or something else?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was there was a whole group of cable folks, and this may get a little political, and I'll try not to, but a particular senator who, one of his big constituents is CenturyLink Cable, was, crying for for basically the money to build fiber to every cable, multi-video operation. So putting fiber into all of those locations was, what that particular politician wanted to do with the $91 billion. He didn't, he was focused on that. And I think it's the ACA, the Cable Association, that's what they were screaming for, is they wanted this to finance fiber to every market's facility. So, that's a lot of fiber, and specifically to radio and television stations in rural areas. A lot of people, don't have a studio in that market anymore, and their radio transmitter or TV transmitters on top of a mountain, where fiber's 18, 20 miles away. So it's two different solutions. But yeah, there are some people who are going to go to fiber, or going to go to so there are even some people going to internet delivery,
and it's permissible in the FCC order that spelled all this out, said that it's perfectly fine to accept lump sum payouts to finance that move. So that's totally legitimate.
That is true. And I think that's a case by case basis. So based on where you're at and how close you are to fiber.
Thank you for the honest response. I appreciate
it. Sure thing. That wasn't so bad.
All right.
Try harder.
Anything else?
Try harder.
Anyone?
Well, those are great questions. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the time and letting us be a part of your chapter this evening.
Oh, we definitely appreciate that. Doesn't look like Eric Hain made it back for the rest of the meeting. So if we don't have anything else, once around to the board members, Fred.
Yeah, very timely. I was wondering if has anybody done any filter changes and come up with any surprises before we go? I haven't done mine yet.
I'm doing one tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We did one for WBAL radio and no issues.
No issues.
I mean, everything had to be repeaked, refocused, repolled, but it came out fine.
Hey, okay. Carrie, quick question.
Yeah.
Did you take note of the insertion loss? What did you get for insertion loss?
I didn't take note of it, but it was taken note of. But okay. I didn't see the work on it. I wasn't on site.
Yeah, because I was surprised last week by the 10 that we did. We saw a much wider variation than I expected. I expected most of them to be, a half a dB, but it went from anywhere from a half a dB to 2 dB. So
that's pretty impressive. I was expecting about 4 or 5.
Oh no, 2 dB was the worst I had. I was expecting them to be consistent. And like Carrie, we had to, when we saw the larger numbers, we wound up, repeaking and repolarizing.
All right. Anything else? Dan? Brian?
I think we're good. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. See, look, nice. Doug, we would have let you go with plenty of time to do another chapter. You could have, you slacker, man. But thanks. It was great to have both of you fellas and everyone who showed up. It's all the members and attendees that make Chapter 37 and all the SBE chapters around the country strong.